Lesson 2 of today's prophet, a new generation mindset. Now, before I continue, you should already have done this. It's not that difficult. This lesson is based on chapter 2 of the Today's Prophet book, that beautiful book right here. So, if you haven't read one chapter since last week, you don't have any hope. I have no hope for you, okay? So go back, pause the video, go read the chapter, okay? Because I will be touching on a lot of what Apostle Colette does teach in that chapter. And if you don't know what she teaches, what I'm about to say could be a little confusing, okay? All right, now that that's out the way. The new generation mindset. Guys, let me be real here. As a prophet, as a trainer, as a principal, I have this catchphrase I tell all of my students, whether they're mine personally or somebody else's students. When they start getting uppity and telling me about all their great big experiences in ministry and their great big revelations and how up there they are, how much they've lived, I have this catchphrase I love to tell them. I said, I don't care. That's legit. I tell them, straight up, I don't care. Because here's the thing. I don't care about your past experience. I don't care about your past revelations, your past dreams, your past anointings. I really don't care about that at all. Now, before you get offended at me and you get all uppity, again, like I said at the beginning, and you want to start saying, well, how can you just say that? I went through every death there was in the book to earn this anointing, to earn this gift, to earn these tools, to earn my title. I went through every school there was. I don't care, not because I don't love you. I don't care because I care more about what God is going to do today and tomorrow and 10 years from now. An old generation mindset is one who cannot let go of the past to focus on the future. Now, let's backtrack just a little bit. Now that I've evened out the playing field, so that you know for the rest of this lesson and for the rest of this course and this entire third module, I do not care about your previous accolades. I don't care what you went through in prophetic training. I care about what you are going through today and God is taking you through for tomorrow. All right? I don't want to know about what you've already done. I want to know what you are doing today and what you will do tomorrow. So, Hebrews 8, verses 6 through 8. But now Jesus, our high priest, has been given a ministry that is far superior to the old priesthood. For he is the one who mediates for us a far better covenant with God based on better promises. If the first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no need for a second covenant to replace it. But when God found fault with the people, he said, "The day is coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and Judah." And if you skip down to verse 13 in Hebrews 8, it says, when God speaks of a new covenant, it means he has made the first one obsolete. In other words, he doesn't care. It is now out of date and will soon disappear. In other words, let it go. It's disappearing. It's obsolete. Jesus doesn't care about the old covenant. He cares about the new covenant that he died on the cross for. Can we go there, please? Can we look at that? God himself has called your past experience obsolete because the moment you were placed into prophetic office, prophet, you created a new covenant. Remember how we taught in the last couple of lessons, the introduction in lesson 1, that now that you're a prophet in office, You carry a greater authority. You carry a greater power. You carry a greater, well, just everything. Now, how can you carry a greater thing if you are holding on to a lesser thing? That's the old covenant. The old covenant was lesser because you were in prophetic training. You weren't meant to have the full prophetic authority, the full mandate placed on your shoulders yet. Otherwise, you would have been crushed. You would have crushed a couple of other people along the way as well. So by the time you were finally placed into office, that old thing was done away. That thing that was in part was done away with. That is what happened. So when we come to look at the new generation mindset, we have to first step back and look at the old. What is this old generation mindset? And you're not going to believe this, but even as a prophet in office, having gone through the training you have, being stripped of your old ways of thinking in the prophetic, you still function in it. I myself actually really just came to this death very recently that, as the principal of the prophetic school, I'm dying daily. I'm training daily. I'm continually learning because I'm continually getting new kinds of students. I'm getting new kinds of leaders that I'm working with. And so I never really considered that I was stuck in an old generation mindset until I had to come and preach this course. And the Lord was like, so you want to break them out of their mold? You might want to look at the mold that you're stuck in yourself. And it was actually quite shocking to realize just how much of that old mindset was locked into me. And so we're going to smash that mindset. And I'm going to go over a few of the main points that Apostle Colette actually does teach in the book. Remember I said at the beginning you better have read it, otherwise it's not going to make sense? Yeah, we're at that point now. Point number 1 of an old generation mindset is a desire to save the lost. Yeah, that doesn't work anymore. With the birth of John the Baptist, we had the birth of evangelists. And so it is the evangelist's job. But I see so many prophets desiring to go out and evangelize and save the lost. It's not our mandate, guys. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, actually you will, as a prophet, everyone in the fivefold should be able to evangelize. You should be able to reach the lost. You should be able to have them come into a face-to-face relationship with Jesus. But the idea, the picture of how you save the lost needs to be smashed, because you are not going to save the lost like an evangelist, walking up to a stranger and just giving a prophetic word and just telling them their whole life story, because you're not anointed to do that. We as prophets, we get that revelation on a daily basis. But when the evangelist does it, he is anointed to do that. When he does that, it is at a specific time, a specific place. He has all the circumstances in his favor, and the power and the anointing he exudes when he does that is what reaches that person and gets them saved. Prophet, your prophetic word is not going to get that person saved. Okay? Going on your mission and your retreats, you're going on your church outings to build churches in the middle of nowhere to evangelize the lost is not going to work. Because, prophet, what is our mandate? Relationship is our mandate. You are going to evangelize, for lack of a better word, the lost by relationship. As they get to know you, they get to know Christ. And I don't mean you live a moral life and you don't really speak of Christ and they get to know Christ because of your moral and how you live. No. We do not compromise. Prophets, we are black and we are white. We talk about Jesus and we are Jesus. And they better dang well know that you're a prophet who loves Jesus and understands what is truth and what is not. But do they like you? Do they have a relationship? We covered that in the introduction to this course. So yes, the way you are going to save the lost needs to be smashed. Convicting people of their sin? Well, again, the role of the evangelist. Because we focus on what? Grace, faith, hope, love. It says love is the greatest weapon. But so many times we try to go out there, especially those who finally get into office. We want to stand up there and we want to convict the people of their sin because that's what's going to change the church, right? We're going to convict the pastor of his sin and what he is doing wrong. emphasis on the love that covers a multitude of sins. Kind of contrary to trying to convict sin, because love covers. Love sees no wrong. Love looks for the best. So you kind of can't try and convict people of sin when you're supposed to overlook it, cover the sin. Not overlook the sin. Let me backtrack here. Not overlook the sin. We'd never overlook sin, prophet. We're black and we're white. But we do cover the sin, just as Christ died on the cross to cover our sin. Because it was through him covering our sin that we came to love Jesus and we came to be saved, wasn't it? That we came to be convicted of our sin and wanted to change because he covered us for it. So, that's the second mindset that needs to be smashed. Third, to warn others of their sinful nature or sinful ways, that they may turn away from their sinful ways and avoid judgment. Now, you may think, oh, isn't that in line with the other one about the convicting others of sin? And you know, no, it is very different, because here's the thing. Again, it's the role of the evangelist. You should have already got this memo by now. If you haven't, please go read the book. Anyway, here's the thing. We are not the judges. You go through your prophetic training to strip away your bitterness and your judgment, because we are not the judges. That was the role of the Old Testament prophets, hence the book of Judges, which is a book of prophets judging the people, because the people themselves didn't have Jesus as their priest. They only had the prophets to go to. The prophets were their priests. The prophets were the ones that could judge them and tell them if they were living a holy life or not, because Christ did not have that relationship with the people. But now we have a relationship. Everybody has a relationship with Jesus. So your job of judging people and trying to get them to turn from their sinful ways is out the door now. That doesn't work. Rather, we tear down the strongholds that stand in the way of people turning away from those sinful natures, those sinful ways. Prophet of God, we are meant to tear down and to build up. Have you ever considered that that person you ministered to several times and prayed and decreed over keeps going back to their old sin like a dog to their vomit because they have a stronghold in their life that you need to be doing warfare for? Hello? Is that not the role of the prophet? Is that not what you were trained to do? Is that what you were called to set the captives free? So what? Did you think you were going to set the captives free with a nice prophetic word and a cushy revelation, and then they've got to go back to their abusive husbands? Sir, how are you going to set the captive free, huh? You just sent them back to prison and let them go and get locked up. They came to you, they got delivered for 5 minutes during that meeting, and now they're going back to their prison cell with all their shackles, and they can't do nothing about it. So instead of judging them for going back to their sin, why don't you help them and actually tear down the stronghold that's keeping them bound? Because it is the evangelist's job to convict them of their sin and turn them away from their sinful ways. Because again, anointed to do it, you're not. You're not anointed to do it. Sorry. You are anointed, though, to tear down. You are anointed to create a pathway. Have you ever thought of, when it comes to the whole evangelizing concept and saving the lost, that you should do warfare for the lost? Prepare the ground, decree, birth. Why don't you actually snatch them from the fire? Why don't you cover them, prophet? Smashes your whole way of thinking, doesn't it? And 2 more steps. First one, the final step here, step 4, is that the prophet walks alone. That doesn't work. If you didn't get that in the last lesson, if you didn't get that in your whole time of training, if you haven't gotten that your whole life, where God placed you in a family, God placed you in a marriage, God placed you in a church, the prophet kind of needs people. But no, we want to stand up there and we want to prophesy. We're the prophet of God and then go off. But God placed you around people for a reason, because you're not meant to work alone. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, the last act of the one-man show was Jesus on the cross. And you can't top that. Because, his one-man show was pretty dang awesome. He died on a cross, he covered sins, he tore the veil, he went down to hell, snatched the keys back from Satan. He did some pretty amazing stuff on his last one-man show. Yeah, there's no way we're going to top that, guys. Sorry. We can try, but it's certainly not happening. And so, let's smash this mentality. God placed you in a family. Like literally, he formed you in your mother's womb and birthed you into a family. Whether it was flawed or not, he placed you around people because you were shaped by people for people. That line I had you write at the introduction in the beginning of this course, I hope you remember it because it is the theme of your training as a prophet in office. Trained by the people for the people. Sounds very patriotic, I know. But still, you were placed around people for a reason, to smash this lone wolf mentality. When you look at these 4 points are the main points that God is trying to smash in you, prophet. These are the old generation thinking. This is the old mentality that has kept the church and prophets bound for many years. And today, we have a new mindset. And on that bombshell, I'm going to take a sip. To introduce to you what the new generation mindset looks like, I'm going to walk you through my story a little bit here. Now, many of you might know this. Well, honestly, if you've gone through any of Apostle Colette's prophetic materials, you should really know this very well. But I grew up in a house of prophets. I was a prophetic child. I grew up in a house of prophets. I was surrounded by prophets. Everybody was prophesying, full-on prophetic ministry, prophets in office. But probably what you don't know, and this is a common misconception with prophets, they seem to think that if I get involved in a prophetic church, if I get involved with prophets, I am going to be like the rest of them. Yeah, I blew that theory out of the water because I was still a black sheep in a house of prophets. You're not meant to be a white sheep no matter where you go. A prophet is always going to fit out. A prophet is always going to be a black sheep because they're meant to be the tear down of strongholds, the builder up of strongholds. You're going to be tearing down old mindsets. So you're not meant to fit in. You're meant to be uncomfortable so that you continually learn. And this is what I had to go through. I had to realize that even in a house full of prophets and apostles, nobody understood me. They had an understanding of me because they knew the prophetic, they knew the process I was going through, but nobody could fully understand me. They weren't meant to, because only Jesus could fully know me. And if he didn't fully know me, I wouldn't be who I am today, would I? I wouldn't be the prophet for today that God has called me to be. And you wouldn't be the prophet that God had called you to be today either, would you? Because we find our identity, prophet, in Jesus. We find who we are in Jesus. And so we have to fit out so that we can find the one place we belong, in the arms of Jesus. Now, I'm going to fast forward my training days because, that's the boring stuff. We're not here to talk about how I went through my prophetic training. We're here to talk about what happened afterwards, because that's where you're at. You finished your training, you're in office, now what? Well, prophetic office training hit like a bomb. Boy, did it hit like a bomb. But, I managed to get a handle on it. I think I did pretty well, or I thought I did, until the time where the Lord started smashing that lone wolf mentality, because I'm really a lone wolf. So for a lot of you probably really don't know this. I think I do a pretty good act, but I am very strong-willed. I'm very strong-willed. You can ask anybody. But I am also very stubborn, and I like to do things alone, because I know I can get the job done. I don't trust people very much. It's a big character flaw that the Lord is currently working on. I'm better at it now, but still. And I'm running the prophetic school at this time. I mean, I'm the principal of the prophetic school. My husband's doing whatever he's doing, but I'm it. I'm on every ministry phone call. I'm marking the projects. I'm talking to the trainers. This is my mentality here, okay? Don't look at me like that, Michael. He's behind the camera. But yeah, that was my mentality. I really thought it was all up to me to save the world. And so I was. And then the Lord placed me under my apostle. Let me say pastor at this time, because I graduated to working with my apostle. I had to first learn to work with my pastor. He wasn't my apostle at first. And Apostle Craig, he got the mandate. He got the vision from the Lord to start the gathering place, which is basically a local church. Now, I grew up in a house of apostles and prophets, international ministry. So local church was not a thing for me. My picture of local church was the stereotypical status quo, things that you see on YouTube and Facebook and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm okay. I didn't get to go to a normal church growing up, and I'm really okay not having a normal church, okay? I don't want to do that. And then the Lord burst my bubble, and he said, do you realize that your universal church is actually your local church? It took me a couple of months to wrap my head around that. I've kicked up again. Guys, I kick up the cross really well. You think you guys are bad? I'm sorry, I'm the star of kicking up on the cross and refusing to die. No, you guys are good. You guys are fine. It takes you a week or two. Takes you a couple of months. Took me a lot longer than that. It took me at least a year to finally die to that point that, yeah, this was my local church. I've been in local church all my life. And the gathering place was just actually taking everything that I had lived in and putting a name to it. And now putting structure to it, because you know how well we prophets love structure, right? Not very much. That was a joke. And so the gathering place comes. I discover my local church has been around me all along. It was the people around me. It was the leader God placed over me that I had actually been working with. Now, here's the thing. I had been working under Apostles Craig and Colette and Nathan and Chifa for a while. I always worked under them, but I never had a set apostle or pastor that I went to. At that time, my pastor was whoever I went to, according to what was taught in the pastor-teacher school. I'm not getting into that. Go learn about that somewhere other time. And then God really said, okay, so here is your pastor that you really have to submit to, and them alone. Yeah, no, that didn't go down well. There were screaming matches in the gathering place between me and my pastor. No, legit. There were shouting, screaming matches. Many a time, the other team members had to come in and say, guys, we're on the phone, and we can hear everything that is being said. And there were not nice words being said either, okay? Because I'm very dramatic. And yeah, it took some time, but God had to break my legs a couple of times until I finally really submitted to that leader and to that local church. So that was death number one. Death number one, God finally really put one specific leader, pastor, I'm really going to emphasize pastor here, over me that I had to submit to. I couldn't just go wherever I wanted, to whatever leader I wanted, to whatever ministry I wanted, to whatever teaching I wanted. I had to submit under one person and follow that one person's mandate and that one person's vision. And you know what? One of the biggest fights that we had was that his focus wasn't on the prophetic school. I'm called to train prophets. I have a prophetic school where I am training prophets. And he keeps telling me to do things that I thought didn't line up with that picture, didn't line up with that mandate. Turns out actually it did. He had the foundation. He had the mandate all along. I just was so wrapped in my perspective, remember that previous thing, and my own mindset of how I was going to walk out this mandate that I did not see the bigger picture. I only saw my one little piece, and even then, only a corner of my one little piece. But when I finally submitted to my pastor, when I finally submitted to him all my tools, my visions, and I did what he asked of me, the way he asked it of me, in the time he asked it of me, I finally understood my place in that team and in that church. And I began to flourish in a way that I didn't before. Death number 2 was learning to work with the team. Now, we talked about this already a little bit on the last one, so I'm not going to labor the point. I had to learn to submit to those in my team because we were equal. None was above and none was under. And of course, I'm a strong personality type. So I came in there all PI, strong personality, trying to take the lead, to get my legs cut off a couple of times by my pastor, until I could settle and I could learn to just be peers, be friends with my team. Because we prophets, you know how well we prophets are at making friends, right? Not very good. And if you think you're good at making friends, you've got problems. Because prophets, it's really one of our main character flaws. We're not very good. It takes some training for us to develop real, I'm not just talking platonic. Okay, look, you may know a lot of people. You may have a lot of connections. You may talk to a lot of people. But that doesn't mean you're a good friend. Trust me, you're not a good friend. You may just be a good acquaintance, a good person, a good contact. But a real friend influences you, like we learned in the last 2. So I'm not going to go on that point. By submitting to this pastor, by working in this team, I discovered my mandate. I discovered what I was meant to do to change the church, to change the world around me, to reach the people out there. Because pretty much right after I really settled into being part of the team, submitting under my pastor, God shifted me and my son was born. And we had to leave, literally. We left the house for almost 6 months. And I could not be part of my team the way I was before. And I had to stand on what I learned in that team, what I learned in that pastor. Could I still be submitted to my pastor when I was sent out? Could I still be submitted to that mandate, to that vision, when I was sent out and there was nobody to watch me, nobody to see me? That was the real test of my prophetic office, of my mindset for the new generation. Because an old generation will go back. Remember what we talked about before? If that stronghold wasn't torn down, they go back to that old way of thinking. They go back to that old mindset. When they leave home, we say this about our children. When they leave home, you will see what you put in them, and you will see what they did and didn't take. Well, I left home. I was a prophet out there in the wilderness, surrounded by the world at every side. I didn't have a Christian near me, guys. So what was left? Well, I'm happy to report that it was the mandate and the vision that my pastor put in me. So, your old mindset has been stripped. That's how it gets stripped. But now how do we walk it out? Well, this is how you know you're beginning to walk it out. How you know you are walking out your pastor's mandate and vision once you get sent out. But let's start with 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 9 through 15. It is a little long, but bear with me. For we are both God's workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. Because of God's grace to me, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Do you catch that? Now others are building on top of it. But whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one that we already have, Jesus Christ. Anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials: gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, that builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned away, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. Isn't this just a beautiful picture for what I just mentioned? The Lord takes you through training to build a foundation, but it is your pastor who builds on top of it. You cannot build yourself. And when you go out, you face that fire, you face that pressure, and it burns, and it will tell you exactly how much of your pastor's building did you take. How much of it was gold, how much of it was hay, wood, jewels. This will determine, just how much of your new generation mindset you took on. But here are some practical steps to identify if you are walking out the new generation mindset. You begin to help your pastor by training up others, either in their calling or practically with administration. You begin to invest into the vision, in other words. You're not just following around your pastor following you around and trying to get you to do a job. You are investing into their vision. You are investing into the work your pastor is building. Step 2. You are constantly learning, growing, and gaining a new understanding. You're not locked in your old way of doing things. Listen, I have learned more about training prophets by actually just working with other prophets, other trainers, other people, than I have just by training by myself. Every day, every week, I am learning a new way to train the prophets because I get new kinds of students. I get those that are much older than you or me. I get those that are much younger than me or you. I get those who have more experience in ministry, those who are maybe just getting into ministry. I have students who don't know a lick about the prophetic and those who are so well versed in the prophetic that they really don't know anything. But because of this well-round, and not to mention in my team, I have in my team prophets, I have in my team a teacher, I have in my team a pastor and apostle. I have to learn to work with different kinds of people. And because of this, how I minister, how I train changes continually. I'm continually learning something new. And that is how you know you are walking out a new generation mindset, because you are not stuck in the old. You are continually learning something new. You know, the scripture tells us that Christ died that we may walk out a new law. Not the law of Moses, but the law of the Spirit. And do you really think the law of the Spirit remains the same? The Spirit is a living thing within us. It is alive within us. And the depth of knowledge it knows and understands is untouchable. You can't even begin to scrape the surface. And so, if you want to know if you're living, you're gaining new knowledge because you're getting more understanding. You're gaining more law of the Spirit. Number 3, you are running after your pastor for the next steps to walk out. Kind of related to number 1 there about how you are investing, but you are running after. Once you've completed a step, you are going to your apostle, you're going to your leader, you're going to your pastor, and you're saying, okay, I did what you asked of me, it's done, what's next? And you're nagging them continuously, all day, every day. So what's the step? What's the pattern? What am I going to do? Hey, what am I doing here on the prayer wall? Hey, how am I doing this counseling session? Hey, how am I going out and I'm reaching this person? Hey, what am I going to do to mark this lesson? How do I respond to this email? Where are we going next? What do you want me to do next? What's next, pastor? What's next? What's next? You're nagging them because you want to step out next. And I don't mean you're doing this because you have to and you're pulling it up out of you. No, you're doing this because you want to. It's naturally there. You're naturally hungering after the next step. You're hungry for that new revelation, that new understanding. Number 4, you will go out to build and establish a work alongside your pastor and team. Remember how I said, the Lord sent me out and I had to stand basically on my own 2 feet. And I had a choice to do it on my own, or I had a choice to still lean on my team and my pastor. And like I said, thankfully, I got the memo. It did take a little bit of a smack at first because I was a little wound up in my own life and what I was going through. But once I got the memo, I did. And it really gave me a grounding that I could face and weather any storm because I wasn't alone in it. And so it is the same. When you go out, you will automatically want to lean on your team and your pastor on what to build, what to establish out there in the world. And finally, number 5, one of my personal favorites. Your cultural mindsets, likes and dislikes will change. You don't realize just how much of your old generation mindset of just, I'm even just talking as being of a prophet, is wrapped up in your culture, in your upbringing, in how you were brought up. You get so locked in that you can't think and see anything else. So God will change the way things that you like. He will challenge you to try new things. I recommend trying sushi if you haven't. Learn to like it. You can ask Dalton about that story. He has a really funny story. Well, I don't know if it's funny for him. Like now it's funny, but in the moment it wasn't very funny. But anyway, yes. Get out of your comfort zone. What is that one thing you hate that you will never try, that you are so against? Learn to love it. Because if you want to reach the people, guess what? The people who love that food, if you want to reach them, you better learn to like it. So you have something to connect on. Yeah, your cultural mindset needs to be smashed. You need to be all things to all men. You need to reach the Jews and the Gentiles alike. How do you think you're going to reach them if you're fussy like Peter was on top of the freaking house? God presents him a beautiful buffet and he's like, no, Lord, I can't take anything you're giving me. No, Lord, I refuse to take what you are giving me. And God had to say, don't call unclean what I call clean. I called these animals clean. I don't care what your law says. I called them clean. What is God called clean? What is God called unclean? Your obedience is very specific. But don't stick your nose up at it. Because if you want to reach the people, yet don't call dirty what God is called clean. So yes, try sushi. Finally, today's prophets won't be found in the church, guys. Most of them are actually out there in the world. You need to step out there to reach them. You know, when I stop to think about it, today's prophets are who? Not the old generation, it's the new generation. That's who today's prophets are. And if you want to reach those prophets, you want to change the church, you need to step out. You need to go out there. You need to stop trying to work in your old mindset. Look, some of you, God is going to have work specifically in the church, and some of you, God is going to have work specifically in the world. But if you want to change the church, you want to be the prophet for today. The prophet for today is not going to be shaped in the church. The prophet today is going to be shaped in the world around us. That is how the prophet for today is going to be shaped. That is how you're going to change the church. So, what works today will not work 10 years from now. What worked 10 years ago doesn't work today. Break the mold. Reach the next generation, guys. You want to change the church? It's not going to happen by you changing the old people of the past who's stuck in an old mindset. You're going to change the church by reaching the generation of today, the generation of tomorrow, the generation of 10 years from now. That is how you will change the church. Because the generation of old, they've already grown up. They've already had kids. Their kids are already functioning in that old mentality. What are you going to do? They're not having kids again anytime soon. So you're just going to change one generation from the past that's going to die out, and the next generation is going to be what? The old generation again, because you didn't start at the beginning. And then they're going to grow up, and they're going to have kids, and you're too busy trying to reach them while their kids are growing up with the old generation, and it's a domino effect. So start with the generation of today. Can we be practical here? You want to change the church? Start with the youngsters. Start with the young generation. Start with those who already have a budding prophetic call and are standing up and wanting to change the world. You have the influencers all over the internet, all over social media. You've got the protesters in the streets. Because why? They want to change the world. So why don't you start by changing them and giving them the right message that will change the world? My last piece of advice, as we end off, your call is progressive. Don't be stagnant, you guys. That is the biggest thing any prophet can do, is remain stagnant. Look for the mindset that needs to be smashed. Look for the restriction in yourself. Look for it. Don't remain stagnant. That is the biggest problem. If I can dare say, I can see with any prophet out there, any prophet in office, it's like once they hit office, they settle. They settle for what they've gone through. They settle for the ministry they have now, and they don't progress and they don't go forward. But guys, we're not meant to remain stagnant. Why isn't that ministry growing? Why isn't your team growing? Why isn't your pastor's vision growing? Because you remain stagnant, prophet. You're meant to bring in the new move. You're meant to bring change into this church. And so yes, if I can leave you with any last piece of advice, it is that. Look for the cross. Challenge yourself. Look for the challenge. Because here's the thing, you are a prophet in office. If you are doing what God needs you to do, God will encourage you to change. He will want you to evolve. He will bring you things that will help you progress, but He's not going to force it on you. He gives you an option. You know, in training you don't have an option, but in office you have an option. You have an option to get hold of the new or to stay where you are at. So choose the new option. Choose to grow. Choose to learn. Do not become an old wineskin. Do not allow your cup to remain full. Empty it out. Teach what you receive to others, that you may learn something new. Is that not our prophetic mandate? We live something that we may teach it to others, that we may live something again. And that will never change. Your choice. You get a choice this time. That changed. But the part of our mandate where we go through for others will never change. So embrace it, guys. Embrace this pressure. Embrace this change, because I know it's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with any change. And I'm expecting it. And I'm looking out for it. And I'm teaching this message. So if I'm uncomfortable, I can imagine you guys are even more uncomfortable. And I know it's not fun. But neither is going in for surgery to get a broken leg fixed. So embrace it. Embrace the pain. Embrace the uncomfort of your leg being in that cast for a little while until that leg heals up. Because once it is, you will walk without a limp. You will walk without a hindrance. And so, I will leave you at that. Next week's lesson is based on chapter 3 of the Today's Prophet book. Please make sure to read it. Please make sure that you know what I'm going to be teaching. And then I will see you next week. And you have a good, blessed day. And enjoy having that mindset smashed.